Hello and welcome back to the Chatcave podcast, where I discuss media in the forms of reviews and discussions. I'm your host, Plankton, and today I'm going to try two topics here. Obviously, if I have enough time. If not, I'll do one. And I'll start with the one, which is obviously a game that comes out. Well, the launch of this podcast episode, it comes out this today. But obviously, if you brought the deluxe or the obviously top edition, you got a week early access on it, which obviously I did. Now, of course, it's WWE 2K25, the latest edition in the WWE 2K franchise. And obviously, if I'm gonna be honest with you, I haven't played a lot of it. I've mainly played the story mode. Haven't finished it yet. Pretty much at the end, or at least the back end of this story mode. Planning to play it this morning. Got hit with a massive update file, so I could not play it. I mean, I'm looking at my Steam screen in the background right now, and it's almost at the end of installing. So I end up having to play Alan Wake 2, which at some point in the next couple of weeks, or maybe the next month or so, I'll do an entire episode on that game. But anyway, obviously, I picked this. I picked the Dead Man edition up because obviously you got the basic edition, you got the Dead Man edition, and you've got the Bloodline edition, which is obviously the top fucking edition, which for me isn't worth it at all. But obviously, the Dead Man edition for me is reasonably worth it because obviously you get the game and you get the DLCs, you get the early access. For me, that's much more worth it than the Bloodline edition, which doesn't really add much that I require. Most of the shit it adds is to do with my faction stuff, which I do not play in this game whatsoever. My main focus in this game is single player, obviously with normal matches, story mode, universe mode, GM mode, and just creating characters. That's all I'm here for. And obviously, I've done at least 2 of those. And the tutorial, but so far, it's pretty much the same as last year's game. I'm not really going to nag on it too much. I've been reading a lot of comments off people, obviously on the reviews on Steam and stuff, and they obviously because at the moment of me recording this, Steam's reviews are very mixed, and obviously I've read a lot of the negative reviews. People saying obviously there's bugs, crashes, and they've been having issues with it. And I was thinking, well, the only 2 issues I could say I had. One, when I saved my, obviously, custom creation, which was my second custom creation I made, the game decided to just go in the infinite loading screen loop, which kind of fucked me over. But it also didn't, because it did actually save my game. So actually, I can't be too pissed off with that. Yes, it was annoying that I had to relaunch the game, but I didn't actually have to remake the character, so I'm not going to be too annoyed with that. And the other glitch I had, which is obviously during the career mode, which is, I'd say about half, just before the final leg of the story. So obviously when you're dealing with obviously the Survivor Series plot line, obviously you get to choose the wrestlers you want to back you up in the story. And for me personally, I obviously, because the options you get was Jey Uso, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins for the men's side. The women's side had Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, and Jade Cargill. Obviously I went with Becky and Jay. But for some reason, the game kind of thinks that if you're going with Becky Lynch, you're going to go with Seth Rollins, since obviously they're married in real life. And for some reason, the entirety of Jay's dialogue was a Seth's voice reading, obviously the lines that Seth would be reading, which is like stuff like, "Oh, hey, it's okay, babe." I was like, okay, it's a weird ass glitch. It was a funny glitch, though. I don't mind a good funny glitch. I'm fine with that. I mean, when I obviously the 2K20 game came out, which was obviously complete clusterfuck. Obviously, I never really got the game-breaking glitch. I got more of the humorous glitches, and for me, this is obviously in that humorous glitch case, because it was just, it's just funny just hearing obviously this other guy's voice coming from this character, obviously speaking to his wife, but obviously it's clearly not that character speaking to his wife, and that just cracked me up. It really did. But obviously, I've been playing WWE games on a yearly basis since 2K20, 2K25. We're on 2K25 now. 2K15. Because I picked up, I think it was the 2012 or 2013 game. Like a couple of years after it launched, and obviously I got me really into wanting to play actual WWE games again. Since I haven't played any of them really since I was a kid. But obviously I picked up 2K15. Obviously the Christmas of, obviously the year of it launch. And I've pretty much been getting them yearly since then. Obviously, back then it was October releases, were they? But obviously, ever since the 2K20 fuck up, they've been going for more of the March releases, which I don't mind, to be fair, because it gives you a good, obviously, the game before WrestleMania, and you can get obviously hyped more for Mania. So I don't mind actually releasing in March. I mean, it kind of fucked me over this year because I got that out. You got Assassin's Creed Shadows out in a couple of weeks, and obviously you got Split Fiction out. So I've had to sacrifice Split Fiction for a month or two, so I could obviously just play this and Assassin's Creed. But say obviously they've added a few new features in this game. Obviously, well, added a few new features. They brought back features from old games, i.e., intergender matchups. Since obviously you've had the mixed tag team stuff in the past, where obviously you got your male and female wrestler one side, same the other side. Only the males can interact with each other, and the females can interact with themselves. But now obviously they've gone back to the idea of, okay, what if you had obviously that same sort of idea, but what if obviously the male and the female wrestler can fight? Which is an interesting idea. When you're playing the story mode, obviously it does lead to some interesting moments, which is pretty cool. I haven't looked fully into obviously if you can use obviously that sort of idea in like the war game stuff. I need to look into that because obviously I've got a lot of ideas circling there because of obviously these new features for obviously FEW. A lot of storylines that I could go with, a lot of storylines I could change because of these new features. But I need to have a look actually fully into them. But as I say, I did the tutorial, which took a little while. Obviously, reintroduced you to like, the chain wrestling stuff, which obviously was a feature a couple of games ago, was it? And obviously they took it out, but then they brought it back in. So obviously having this old, it's just the exact same as 2K24, just with, as I say, these old features back into play. And I've still had really fun with the short time I've had. Well, I say short time, I think I put maybe about 10 hours into the game. But I'm not fully counting those hours because 2 attempts at sitting there to play it, I got fucking screwed over by trying to help Hayden buy a gaming PC. So I spent ages dealing with that, and my game just installed nicely. Nice timing that was. And then obviously the following day, not the following day, actually the day after, when I sat there to play it, obviously I kept getting bugged by my knees constantly. So the only time I actually I think Saturday was probably the main day when I actually got on the afternoon when I got to sit down and just bash through a couple of hours of the story mode. And same with Sunday afternoon, just before that. And then my attempt at playing it on launch day just did not happen how I wanted. So my game, I mean, if I get my Steam up real quick. So according to Steam here, my total play time is 13.4 hours. I really want to knock like an hour or two off that. So what, maybe 11 hours of playtime on it so far. And I say most of that's been in the story mode, tutorial, and the custom creations. The only reason I did the tutorial is because usually they give you an achievement for doing tutorial, but this time there wasn't one, which is kind of annoying. So I kind of wasted my time, but it did allow me to get reintroduced to, I say, the chain wrestling stuff, and a few new features like the fact that you can dive off the barricades now. So obviously in WWE games, the main things you could dive off of was the top and middle rope, and obviously just over the top rope. But now they've added the idea of, well, what if you could just jump onto the barricades where the crowd are and do dives off there? What if you could do like a running dive off the apron, obviously on the ring? So they've added a few new features in regards to diving, which is pretty cool. And I have enjoyed those features. But I haven't really sat down to play Universe mode yet. I know, obviously, I've read a lot of people saying it's basically the same as it always has been, which isn't an issue to me. It is what I use to record FEW stuff, so as long as it runs smoothly enough, I don't give a shit. It's fine enough. But obviously, I know they've added promos back into this one, which I'm looking forward to seeing how I can try and utilize that in my content. I'll have to have a look into that soon enough. And I'm kind of if I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of saving the GM mode at the moment, because I know obviously they've added the multiplayer side of it, so obviously you can team up with obviously friends online and have these little competitions rather than just being an offline situation. I know obviously Alex's friend was supposed to be getting the game. I don't know if he has or has not. I'm not too sure, but obviously he'd have access to the game then, so I need to see about that. So then we can obviously play GM mode on obviously his Twitch stream or something, which is kind of what I'm saving that for. But I might have a little look see at the features of that at some point. But my main talk here is obviously on the story mode, which obviously takes inspiration essentially from 2K20, which not many people would want it to, but it does, and for me it works because obviously the story modes have always been obviously before 2K20 was always just like you have your wrestler and he goes through obviously a journey through WWE. I mean 2K19 was easily the best story mode they did with the whole buzz stuff, and then obviously 2K23 and 4 at least off the top of my head, obviously off memory, had actual proper in-depth story modes. So you had, you had these two different paths. You had the male and female. I remember, I want to say 2K23 was the lock and which one was the other one? I can't remember the story of the other one, but I remember it being like the male storyline was you were already in WWE and you were obviously trying to build yourself up from the ground up essentially, and the female one was again you were in WWE, obviously you were related to like a Legends, obviously one they made up for the game if I remember correctly off the top of my head, and then obviously you left WWE after you kind of had an injury issue and a fuck up when you debuted, and then you have to build yourself back up into the company. And then he obviously had a whole rivalry with your auntie and stuff like that. And if I remember correctly, that's what the storylines of 2K23 was. Then 24, my mind's still trying to fucking remember the story modes. I played through them at least once or twice, but I can't fucking remember off the top of my head. I remember the women's storyline was you were an indie wrestler, you had your own company, and you eventually got roped into WWE, and obviously you had a lot of stories there, dealing with your protege, dealing with obviously your best friend being an enemy towards you. And the male one, here's me trying to remember. What's the male storyline in that one? I think, if I remember correctly, it was a case of you kind of just got a shot. Similar to, obviously, the year before when you were already in the company. Whereas, obviously, the year before you were kind of like the next best thing. Whereas this time around, you've been, if I remember correct, again, if I remember right, you're on Raw and that for a while, like a good year, and you hadn't really had an impact. But you got given your chance by winning Regal, and then you kind of just went with it. And obviously, you had a lot of people hating on you for being the champ when you didn't want to be. And obviously, Roman Reigns was involved. Obviously, he dropped his belt. You and Cody had a feud. You won the belt. Obviously, you went through obviously a huge storyline with the belt. Obviously, Roman eventually got involved, and obviously, the whole storyline led to you versus Roman at Mania. Because all these WWE games always usually end up leading to a big story finale at WrestleMania, which makes sense. It generally does. And then this time round, obviously the idea what they took from 2K20, which was you had two characters and they were actually on the same sort of story. They weren't in two separate stories. They were on the same. They're all in the same storyline. Because if I remember correctly, that one was, I think it was Red and Trey, I think, in 2K20. And obviously you were two people trying to get into the industry, going basically just dragging your ass to get to WWE. And if my mind serves correctly, he was the goofball and she was one taking it seriously, but he kind of got looked out by generally becoming a champion by accident. So this time round, obviously you have your two characters. Obviously there's this NXT Mutiny storyline where Kevin Owens and Bayley are getting everyone on NXT, and everyone kind of who used to be from NXT, not every single one, some people stay with WWE, and they're kind of pitting obviously the main roster against NXT, which is a pretty cool idea for a storyline. You're involved because you were the number one draft pick. Obviously, CM Punk's involved, and then you bring in an outside source to help deal with the situation since you only trust them. And you go for this whole storyline battling them. I'm pretty much at the back leg of the story now, which obviously you get to team up with other wrestlers now in terms of obviously legends, indie wrestlers. I think one of the options was, and there's a cool option where you get to team up with past 2K characters from career modes. Annoying that you can't actually make the characters yourself, design them. Obviously, they've locked in specific designs for these characters. I mean, It's lucky that this game doesn't obviously have access to the saves for your characters from the previous games, because all these fucking characters just look like my fucking character. So there's been an army of me fighting through them. But it would have been cool if obviously I could have redesigned the characters to just have them look how I want them to. But it's still a pretty cool idea. I say I haven't got any further than that, but I say I'm up to the point where they're helping me trying to finish off NXT Mutiny once and for all. But there's a lot of twists and turns in the story, which are pretty cool. A lot of stuff where moments where you can see it's about to happen. Like, you know what's going to happen, i.e., someone's got like a chair that you're about to like fight like the enemy, and then they turn on you. Like, there's a lot of those moments where you can see it a mile away. You're like, oh, this is really cool. Wait a minute, I know what's exactly going to happen right now. So obviously, there's a lot of those moments. But I say overall, I think so far the story mode's been really interesting. I've been really engaged in it. I've been really enjoying some of the dialogue options. Obviously, Hayden's actually picked some of the dialogue options for the female character in this one. Since the last couple of games, I've always used my model and her one for the story mode, and since they're intertwined, she was there picking some of the options as I was playing it. Because obviously there's an option, for example, where you can choose that the character's backstory is they used a date, which obviously she chose because she was like, that's a pretty cool idea. So obviously there's a lot of those sort of options. But I say once I play through it once, I'm going to play through it again, because there's so many different unlockable options that you can do based on your character's how your character acts. So if you obviously there's options to unlock if your character's bold, so basically he's more aggressive. No, not scared. Basically, not scared to be in a fight. Obviously, you've got options for being a more comedic character. There's a lot of cosplay options for that one, which is quite interesting. And I can't remember the third option here, but obviously there's the 3 options. So there's a lot of options to do. Whereas, if I remember correctly, in the other games, the previous ones, most of the alternate options was only like 2 options, and they were just based on at that moment. This is what's going to happen, and you do get that in this, but obviously you get the options you then get because of that is due to your character's point of view in terms of their mentality. So I like that there's a bit more in depth into that side of the story. As I would have finished it this morning. I would have actually had an opinion on the entire story this morning if the game didn't have an update. Always the same. Literally everything I've launched today has found a way to have some sort of update. I think Alan Wake 2 is the only thing that hasn't had an update. But everything else, of OBS itself, fucking as a Steam games, everything's going up with update. I'm like, for fuck's sake. I swear to God, if I launch Assassin's Creed Rogue in a minute and it has an update, I'm going to fucking go crazy. But still, as I say, I've had quite a bit of fun with the early access portion of the game. I'm looking forward to seeing as I said, some of the other modes here, but my main focus when I first play these games is the My Rise story, straight in on that, and for me, this My Rise story is pretty fun. But as I say, overall, the game is pretty much very similar to obviously every other WWE game, so if you've enjoyed past entries, I don't see why you're not going to enjoy this. So yeah, the other thing I want to bring up today is a movie I watched last night, which launched, I think it was Friday. It was it 7th of March? Was a Friday? I think it was. Yes, Friday the 7th of March. Obviously, Netflix launched the second of their SpongeBob spin-off movies, Plankton the movie, which obviously is their second of planned at the moment 3 spin-off entries, obviously in the SpongeBob universe. But obviously, this actually marks their 3rd release since obviously they took over releasing a lot of the movies following the Sponge on the Run movie, which is the 3rd one, which is the co-release one. I know the next actual movie is going to cinema, but obviously the last 3 SpongeBob movies that have come out have all gone straight to Netflix, and I mean, The Sponge on the Run was a mediocre movie. It wasn't as good as the 2 before it. It just, I just hate them going more 3D animation. It just doesn't sit right for me for SpongeBob. Especially considering obviously I've grown up heavily on the franchise as obviously over the years, and I can literally binge. I can literally watch over and over again a lot of the old episodes because they're still funny to me. Even at this age, mental age of a child I basically got for this situation, which is perfect for this franchise. Obviously, I say it just wasn't a hit for me, but it wasn't bad. It just wasn't great. And then they followed it. Obviously, Netflix followed up with the Sandy movie, which was Safe in Bikini Bottom, a Sandy Cheeks story, and that came out last September, I think it was. So September 2024. Was it actually? No, August 2024. Sorry. Yeah, August time. I can't remember. It's either right in July or right at the start of August. My brain cannot remember that far back, and it's trying to blank out that movie. I'm gonna be honest with you, because that movie sucked. It just fucking sucked. I mean, when they went, I'm hating the fact they're constantly going above the surface. Just stick below the surface. Just stick to the underwater mayhem. But that movie, obviously, the whole plot line involved real actors in the real world, and there's a lot of really bad CGI in that movie, which is awful. And it just overall was just a mess of a movie. And it's easily like one of my least favorite SpongeBob. It's easily my least favorite SpongeBob movie. And it's one of my least favorite SpongeBob properties, which is a shame because Sandy's a good character, and it's a shame that they fucked up so badly in her solo movie. But I'm happy to say they did not fuck up with the Plankton one. I mean, again, I don't like the 3D animation. Obviously, this movie uses a mixture of 3D animation, 2D animation for a couple of like sequences, and it also has some live action stuff. But the live action stuff in this one isn't bad. It's obviously in short bursts, and it works for this movie. And there's not really horrendous CGI to completely ruin the look of the movie. But I just don't like the overall 3D animation. It just, I don't know. For me, it seems like the worst of the 3D animations. I wish they'd go back to 2D. But other than that, it's still a really fun movie. Obviously, there's a lot of musical elements to this one. Obviously, giving Plankton his own movie, just is another one that makes sense. Obviously, there's a lot of characters. Obviously, the main cast of characters in SpongeBob that you could say, it'd be interesting to see them on some sort of shenanigans, some sort of story, basically, either on their own, let's say, or pairing it with SpongeBob. And this, for me, is the only one that's worked so far, because I did the Patrick Star show, which is not very good, and so then I did the Sandy one, which, again, was not very good. But this one, for me, it works. I think probably because they chose the right story, because obviously they focus heavily on Plankton and Karen and their relationship. They're two characters that we've been obviously invested in for a long time. So seeing them, their relationship break down, and obviously the whole story then just trying to get them back together in some sort of, obviously, while also trying to stop Karen from taking over the world. So that's an interesting story. Thing is with this one as well, I think it probably helps the fact that they actually got the guy that voices Plankton to write the movie. He was a co-writer on the movie. So, in my opinion, you get someone who's had that much time with this character to obviously help write a story for this character. You're always going to probably get it. You're always going to get it right, because they're going to know, yeah, don't do that. Okay, do this. This character would do this. No, he wouldn't do that. So I feel like having him on board as a writer definitely helped this movie nail a lot of the story. Because, as I said, there's a lot of fun in this story. There's a lot of destruction, especially when Karen becomes like Karen Hydra, which is like, she's got like 3 heads. One's aggressive, one's kind of neutral, and one's a bit more scientific. So that was a pretty cool visual to see. And then obviously you got SpongeBob and Plankton going on this quest to find the original Karen. So obviously this retcons, well, I've done it many times before, but retcons a lot of the relationships for Plankton in the past. So that obviously this ignores the fact that him and Mr. Krabs have had obviously some backstory before, and it focuses more on him leaving his family, going to college with a potato and a rollerblade, obviously, and a calculator, because that's the original Karen, and it shows him building the Karen we know and love. So obviously, it's an interesting story seeing him growing up with Karen and helping her become, well, the true Karen. So obviously, a lot of the story then focus on him and SpongeBob going back to college, trying to track down the parts he needs to create, to try and get to try and get Karen to stop this world domination, because she's had enough of Plankton kind of treating her as second fiddle, kind of overlooking her and basically just failing at everything he does, which is why she just goes crazy, goes full fucking Hydra, destroys Bikini Bottom, which is quite fun to watch, because there's obviously a moment where Mr. Krabs, he's got like a little army trying to fight back, and which kind of reminds me of the second film when obviously Plankton is trying to attack the Krusty Krab with obviously his giant robot, his plane and his tank, and obviously Patrick, SpongeBob, and Mr. Krabs are fighting back. This kind of reminds me of that, but obviously it's just Mr. Krabs mainly because Squidward's there, but he's kind of Squidward's barely in this movie. I'm gonna be honest, he doesn't have much dialogue. But to be fair, if you did a movie focused on one specific character, that character should be centre focus entirely. A lot of the other characters should play second fiddle to it. But obviously, then make sure to always have SpongeBob in these stories, because he's the draw, really. So obviously, Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, and Sandy, they all play very minor roles in this story. Sandy plays a bit more of a major role than Mr. Krabs does, because she's obviously utilised for the final acts, and she has a friendship with Karen. But I say overall, the story's pretty. It's an interesting story. It's weird that we're getting a kids movie, and the whole focus is basically essentially a married couple fighting and having to try and find a way to get through this time of their marriage. It's interesting that they went for that for a kid's story, but it works. It generally does. There's a lot of references to the past of SpongeBob. Like, for example, there's a sequence where they're in the basement of the Chum Bucket, and you see a lot of the past failed, not experiments, the failed, what's the word I'm after here? Like gadgets, like schemes, essentially, that Plankton has come up with in the past to try and get the Krusty Krab Krab Patty formula. So the one that stood out, obviously, I know straight away, was the pile of money, when he pretends to be obviously sentient money, but obviously he tries to marry Mr. Krabs. That one I spotted, which I was like, oh, okay, I recognise that one. You got the Chum Bucket helmet from the first movie, which is pretty cool, and obviously even that did the reference of all hail Plankton. That was like a cool little reference, cool little throwback. And there's a couple of other little tanks and robots and stuff that you can see in this basement, which are a good callback if you obviously watch SpongeBob all over these years. Watch the episodes when Plankton has tried to take over the Krusty Krab and take the formula. You're seeing stuff that you recognise, which it's really cool to watch as a fan. Because I say there's a lot of reference in this one to the past, which is as if you grew up watching SpongeBob, or you say just watching it now in general, you'll recognise it, and it's nice little throwback references. But yeah, I think overall it's a fun story. As I say, I just don't like the animation, but I do like the musical numbers. I think the musical numbers are pretty cool. The first one, obviously Plankton's one's pretty good, and I do like the second one, which is obviously when Karen goes evil. There's some that's one when they actually utilise a lot more 2D animation, which looks really good, and I really wish they went for that throughout the entire movie. That would have been pretty cool. I just wish that one of these movies would just go back to the old animation style of the first movie, at least. But obviously, I'm guessing the third movie would do the exact same, be a 3D animation, which is kind of annoying. But I can look past it as long as it's got a good story and it's entertaining, which I think this one is. And as I say, I'm interested to see what character gets the next one, because if you're thinking about it, obviously Sandy's had hers. Plankton's now got his. The only real characters you could say are Mr. Krabs, Patrick, and Squidward. I can't see Patrick getting the third movie because of the fact he's got the TV show. So it would be between Mr. Krabs and Squidward. Personally, I would kind of like to see a Mr. Krabs one, but I got a feeling it's going to be a Squidward one. As long as we get Mr. Krabs ones in the future, I don't give a shit what's next. I'd also love to see like a Mermaid Man, like solo movie, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. That'd be a pretty cool one, like some sort of superhero one. But I think when they announced these, I remember when they announced them a few years ago, Paramount did, and Netflix obviously announced it. And I remember being like, "Oh, Mr. Krabs one could be like some sort of like old timey like war themed one, back in his old Navy days." That'd be pretty fun. That'd be pretty interesting to watch. But we have to wait and see where they go with that, and Hopefully this time it doesn't get leaked online, because this one and the Sandy one obviously end up getting leaked on Twitter back obviously in 2024. I think the Sandy one got leaked like early in the year, I think it was. Or it might have been just before the release. No, it was early in the year, I think it was, yeah. And also the Plankton one, I believe, got leaked like mid-year, like when the Sandy one actually got launched. So hopefully this time around there's no leaks and the whole movie doesn't get leaked on Twitter. But as I say, this 100% is a lot better than the Sandy one. So if you watched Sandy one and was like, this is awful, this one is a lot better. As I say, the live action stuff doesn't really hinder it. The main sequence is obviously right at the end, which I say it doesn't look bad. And then like a bit in the middle when there's a backstory, because there's a lot of Plankton's backstory told via hypnosis. And there's one sequence where you get to see him and obviously Karen go above the surface. Obviously the blending between the animation look and the live action doesn't hinder this movie, like it did with the Sandy one. But still, I'd like them to stick to just the underwater adventures. That works for me. Or I say, if you're going to use live action, do it like this movie. It's not a hindrance. Same, which is kind of like, if you look at it, it kind of took a leaf from the book of, well, the first and second movie, because they have live action sequences. The second one for its ending, first one also kind of for its ending, and they don't really hinder it too much. Obviously, they play a part in the story, but they're not like terrible. They work. Talking about you, David Hasselhoff, that sequence is still fucking hilarious to watch. But that's fine. Anything like that, I'm fine with. It's just headed with the Sandy one, where obviously they had, is it Wanda Sykes, I think was the villain of that one, when obviously she's become like some sort of robot creation, and she obviously, her face on like a screen, and it was just a massive CGI mess, and it just looked awful. Whereas this one, they use obviously the digital effects, but they don't look terrible, and it's fine. But yeah, as I say, this movie offers a really nice heartwarming story between Karen and obviously Plankton. Obviously, another step in their relationship. Offers some good laughs. There is some funny moments at times in this movie. Decent musical numbers. As I say, it's just the utilization of 3D animation, which I just don't like. But other than that, still a fun movie, and I'd probably give the Plankton movie, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. It was fun. As I say, it's just that CG animation, that 3D animation, sorry, that can get fucked off from this franchise, because it's not doing anything good for it, really. It just doesn't look very good. But as I say, other than that, the movie works and it's a fun watch. And hopefully, as I say, the next movie takes a leap from this book, gets whoever the star is involved with the creating the story, doing the writing, get them involved, because you get a much better movie than not having them involved. But still, this is a better step forward for the SpongeBob movie universe, because the last two movies took that step back, took that even further step back, and this one's gone back in the right direction. And obviously, I think the cinema movie's next. Obviously, the fourth main series movie. I think that one's next before the next spin-off one. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty certain it is that way. So hopefully, they take the step further back in the right direction. Even if the movie one and the next one is the same as this one, or the movie one's better than this one, and the spin-off is back to this level, I don't mind staying in that sort of circular region. It's just, don't take the step back like the third movie did, and don't take the fucking leap back like the Sandy movie did. Just stick in this region and I'll be happy, because at least that's entertaining for me to watch. So, yeah, that's pretty much that. So, if you've seen the Plankton the movie, put your thoughts in the comments below. Did you like it? Didn't you like it? How did you compare it to the rest of the movies they've done? And what character would you like to see them go? If obviously with that third spin-off movie, what character would you like to see take the center stage of that one? And then obviously in terms of WWE, obviously if you played any of the game yet, if you played the My Rise story, or just say, is there any of the game? What's your thoughts on it so far? Is it pretty much just like what I said? It's just the same as the last game. I don't really have any issues with this one. So if you're in that same boat, put your thoughts in the comments below. Obviously, if you've had issues with it, let me know what issues you've had. because as I say, I've had no glitches, or well, apart from that one moment, I've had no game breaking glitches like some people have had. You know, a lot of people have had. Obviously, you complain about the island of obviously relevance. Is it? Obviously, there's been issues with that on the console version, because obviously the PC doesn't have that in the game, which is very clear on the trailers. It literally says console only, but then some people are acting like they weren't told that. It literally says in the fucking trailers. But obviously, if you've obviously had any time playing that, obviously Island of Relevance, or whatever it fucking is called, what's your thoughts on that? Because I say I've not seen anything about it. Is it worth at some point down the line checking out? If I pick up the game up on console or something when it's cheap, is it worth checking out? Is it not really? If you know, is it not worth checking out? Put all those thoughts in the comments below. And yeah, obviously that is it. You can check out the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Audible, etc., etc. Obviously, if you're interested in WWE stuff, obviously I do the FEW videos every Sunday, pretty much. Obviously, near enough every Sunday. There's a massive backlog of content of that if you want to catch up on any of that. Obviously, I did the end of the month events on Saturdays as well. Obviously, we're building up at the moment to obviously our Proving Ground event. So obviously, you can check all that out. Other than that, I'm pretty certain that's it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this early thoughts on obviously the WWE game, and obviously my review on Plankton the movie. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
If you like what you've seen, don't be afraid to throw us a little like and subscribe. That's always very appreciated over here. And well, I'll see you on the next video.